Welcome back to Mystic Recap. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a mysterious island hidden in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, an island where terrifying creatures come out of the sea every night. Spoilers ahead. The story begins with a team of explorers traveling across the South Atlantic Ocean. Among them is a weather officer named David. His job is to study weather patterns and collect climate data. The government has assigned him to a remote island located far away from civilization. David must stay there for an entire year and record every change in the weather. The journey takes many days. Finally, the team reaches the island and lands on the shore using small boats. The place looks completely deserted. There are no birds, no animals, no signs of life, only lighthouse and a small house standing against the endless sea. David is supposed to replace another weather officer named Robert. Robert has already spent 1 year on the island collecting weather data. His duty period is over and he should be returning home with the ship. However, things immediately feel strange. When the team enters the house, they find no one inside. Robert is nowhere to be seen. His belongings are scattered all over the rooms as if he vanished without warning. The captain and David become concerned. Thinking Robert may be inside the lighthouse, they head toward it. As they approach, they are shocked by what they see. The entire lighthouse is surrounded by sharp wooden spikes. It looks like a fortress built to keep something out, or perhaps to keep something in. The captain knocks on the heavy door several times, but receives no answer. Eventually, they force the door open and step inside. There they find a strange man named Gruner. When they ask him about Robert, he calmly replies that Robert is dead. According to him, Robert went toward the sea one day and never returned. The answer leaves everyone stunned. After hearing this, the captain gives David one final chance to leave with the ship. He believes that completing the mission will earn him a large reward and help his career. Before leaving, the captain gives David a gun for protection. As the ship disappears beyond the horizon, David realizes he is now completely alone, or at least that is what he thinks. That night, while organizing the house, David discovers an old diary that belonged to Robert. Inside are strange notes about mysterious creatures. There are also several disturbing sketches that make little sense. David assumes the drawings were made by a lonely man losing his mind, but very soon he will discover the terrifying truth. The next morning, David begins collecting weather data around the island. Everything appears normal until he reaches the rocky shoreline. There he notices something unusual. Several stones have been arranged in strange patterns. Seashells have been carefully placed between them, as if someone created a symbol or message. David assumes Gruner is responsible and continues his work. Later, while observing the lighthouse through binoculars, he notices something shocking. For a brief moment, he sees another figure standing beside Gruner, but when he blinks, the figure disappears. David convinces himself that it was only his imagination. That night, he is busy recording weather observations when he suddenly hears knocking at the door. Thinking it might be Gruner, he calls out to him. No answer comes back. David picks up a lamp and slowly approaches the entrance. Then he hears a horrifying sound. It does not sound human. The strange noise grows louder and louder. Suddenly, David notices a hand sliding beneath the door. It is not a human hand. Its fingers are long and twisted. Its skin looks pale and unnatural. Fear rushes through his body. David immediately runs into the basement and hides. Moments later, the creature breaks into the house. The thing moves through the room, searching for him. David watches through a small crack in the basement wall. His breathing becomes heavier. Unfortunately, the creature notices him. With a terrifying scream, it rushes toward the crack and tries to grab him. David quickly grabs a knife and stabs it directly in the eye. The creature shrieks in pain and retreats. For the rest of the night, David remains hidden. He cannot sleep. The next morning, he finds strange footprints outside the house. They are unlike anything he has ever seen. The tracks lead directly toward the ocean before disappearing into the water. Now everything starts making sense. David finally understands why Gruner covered the lighthouse with sharp wooden spikes. David runs to the lighthouse and begs Gruner to let him inside, but Gruner refuses. He tells David that he should have left with the ship when he had the chance. No matter how much David pleads, the lighthouse door remains closed. Left with no choice, he returns to the house and prepares for another night. He seals every window with wooden boards. He surrounds the building with sharp stakes. He places old papers and books near the entrance and pours oil over them. If the creatures return, he plans to use fire against them. While searching through the ruins of the house, he discovers something important, a hidden box. Inside is a rifle and a large supply of ammunition. For the first time since arriving on the island, David feels a small spark of hope, but as the sun begins to disappear below the horizon, that hope slowly turns back into fear. David sits in a corner holding the rifle tightly. Every sound makes his heart race. The silence feels unnatural. Then he hears movement outside. Carefully, he looks through a small gap in the wooden boards. What he sees freezes him in place. Dozens of creatures are emerging from the sea. They crawl across the shore and move directly toward his house. The creatures begin slamming against the door. The walls shake violently. David opens fire. Several creatures fall to the ground. He hopes the gunshots will scare the others away. The creatures attack with even greater fury. Realizing he is running out of options, David ignites the oil-soaked papers outside the entrance. Flames burst into the night sky. The creatures immediately retreat. One by one, they rush back toward the ocean. David survives. But a new problem appears. The fire begins spreading through the wooden house. Within moments, the entire entrance is burning. David wraps himself in a wet blanket and barely manages to escape. During the attack, he also suffers a deep injury to his hand. Outside, he hides behind a large rock near the lighthouse. Soon, heavy rain begins to fall. The storm eventually extinguishes the flames. Unfortunately, it is too late. By sunrise, the house has been reduced to ashes. David has lost everything. Now there is only one place left where he can survive, the lighthouse. Knowing Gruner will never willingly allow him inside, David waits near the lighthouse with his rifle. Hours later, Gruner finally steps outside to collect water. David quietly follows him. Suddenly, a strange creature appears beside Gruner and attacks David. David quickly overpowers it and points his gun at its head. Before he can pull the trigger, Gruner shouts at him to stop. To David's surprise, Gruner reveals that the creature belongs to him. It is not attacking on purpose, it is protecting him. David is stunned. Using the situation to his advantage, David makes a deal. If Gruner wants the creature to live, then he must allow David to stay in the lighthouse. After a long silence, Gruner agrees. David brings his remaining food supplies and ammunition inside. For the first time since arriving on the island, he sleeps safely behind thick stone walls. The following morning, he wakes up to a very strange sight. The creature is gently licking the wound on his hand. David tries to pull away, but then notices something impossible. His injury is almost completely healed. The creature possesses an extraordinary ability. David cannot believe what he is seeing. At that moment, he realizes the island is hiding secrets far greater than anything he ever imagined. Still, one question continues to bother David. Why is this creature loyal to Gruner? Eventually, Gruner reveals the truth. Years ago, he found the creature trapped inside one of his fishing nets. At that time, it was still young. He freed it and saved its life. From that day onward, the creature stayed with him. Gruner also explains that the creatures cannot remain under direct sunlight for long periods. The sun burns their skin. That is why they only attack after dark. As evening approaches, Gruner hands him a weapon. He tells David to prepare for another attack. Soon, darkness falls across the ocean. Moments later, countless creatures emerge from the water. They move toward the lighthouse like an advancing army. Gruner immediately begins firing. Shot after shot echoes through the night. David tries to fight, but fear overwhelms him. Instead of helping, he retreats deeper into the lighthouse. No matter how much Gruner shouts at him, he cannot move. Gruner spends the entire night battling the creatures alone. When morning finally arrives, Gruner wakes David by throwing water directly into his face. He is furious. Gruner tells him that if he wants to survive, he must learn to kill. Otherwise, he will be thrown out of the lighthouse. David has no choice. From that day onward, he follows Gruner's orders. He carries supplies, repairs equipment, collects water, maintains the lighthouse. David starts feeling sympathy for the female creature. The more he observes her, the more he realizes she is not a monster. She is a prisoner, separated from her own kind. Because of this, he gives her a name. He calls her Anaris. As months pass, David and Anaris develop a strange bond. Meanwhile, the attacks begin happening less often. Entire nights pass without any creatures appearing. David believes they may have finally given up, but Gruner disagrees. According to him, the creatures are only waiting for the right moment. Several more weeks pass. One evening after dinner, David and Gruner decide to play chess. For the first time in a long while, both men seem relaxed. Unfortunately, that relaxation leads to disaster. They become so focused on the game that they forget to activate the lighthouse lights. The island is left completely dark. The creatures seize the opportunity. Without warning, a massive attack begins. The creatures swarm the lighthouse from every direction. David and Gruner rush to defend themselves, but they are completely unprepared. The attackers are more numerous than ever before. Their ammunition is running low. Their defenses are failing. Fighting desperately, they retreat higher and higher into the lighthouse. During the struggle, Gruner suffers a severe injury to his leg. For the first time, both men believe they are going to die. Then something saves them. Sunrise. As the first rays of sunlight appear above the horizon, the creatures immediately withdraw. One by one, they disappear back into the ocean. The nightmare is over, at least for now. Later that morning, Anaris approaches Gruner and begins treating his wound with her healing ability. David watches silently. By now, he understands a painful truth. They cannot win this war forever. Their ammunition is nearly exhausted. Their food supplies are running low. Sooner or later, something will have to change. A few days later, David notices something in the distance. A ship. His heart fills with hope. For the first time in months, he sees a chance to escape. He quickly grabs a flare gun and prepares to signal the vessel, but Gruner stops him. He refuses to let David leave the island. At that exact moment, Anaris suddenly attacks Gruner. She is trying to protect David. The struggle gives David a chance to act, but it is already too late. The ship continues sailing across the horizon until it finally disappears from sight. David watches helplessly. His only chance of rescue is gone. Now he understands the truth. Gruner does not want anyone to leave. This island is his kingdom. He wants complete control over everything and everyone around him. After spending so many years alone, he cannot bear the thought of being abandoned. One One day, David carves a small toy boat from the bone of a fish and gives it to Anaris as a gift. To his surprise, she reacts strangely. Instead of keeping the toy, she leads him to a hidden part of the island. There, David discovers a real boat hidden among the rocks. Excited by the discovery, he immediately asks Gruner about it. Gruner admits he already knew the boat was there. He explains that years ago, a group of sailors reached the island after a terrible shipwreck. They survived the storm, but they did not survive the creatures. Every one of them was killed before sunrise. Their ship had been carrying explosives and military supplies when it sank near the island. Hearing this gives David an idea. If they can recover the explosives from the wreck, then they might finally have a way to defeat the creatures. At first, Gruner refuses. The mission is extremely dangerous, but David is determined. He would rather risk his life than continue living like a prisoner. As more time passes, David grows even closer to Anaris. Their bond becomes stronger with each passing day. Unfortunately, Gruner notices jealousy begins growing inside him. He fears losing control over Anaris, and slowly, a dangerous plan begins forming in his mind. A plan that could change everything. Eventually, Gruner agrees to David's plan. The two men take the hidden boat and travel to the location where the old ship sank years ago. When they arrive, David puts on a heavy diving suit and descends into the dark water below. The wreck is still there. Broken pieces of the ship are scattered across the ocean floor. As David searches through the remains, he discovers several boxes filled with explosives. His plan is working, but suddenly he notices movement in the water. Several sea creatures appear nearby. David freezes. The diving suit is too heavy for him to move quickly. For a moment, he believes he's about to die. Then he realizes something surprising. The creatures surrounding him are only children. They stare at him curiously but do not attack. Using the opportunity, David gathers the explosives and begins returning to the surface. Gruner helps pull the boxes into the boat. Soon, they transport everything back to the island. For the next several days, both men work tirelessly. They place explosives around the lighthouse and create multiple defensive lines. Their plan is simple. The next time the creatures attack, they will destroy them all at once. Weeks pass. Winter arrives. Snow begins covering parts of the island. Yet something feels strange. The creatures have stopped attacking. Night after night, the ocean remains silent. David believes they may have sensed the trap. Gruner becomes suspicious. He accuses Anaris of warning her people. His anger grows worse with every passing day. Eventually, he starts abusing her again. This time, David refuses to stay silent. He steps in and stops Gruner. After a heated argument, they agree on a final plan. They will leave the lighthouse gate open. If the creatures enter, they will trigger the explosives and end the war forever. To lure them in, David asks Anaris to call out toward the sea. Her cries echo across the water. Moments later, movement appears beneath the waves. The creatures are coming, and this time, the battle will decide the fate of everyone on the island. A few minutes later, the sea begins to boil with movement. Hundreds of creatures emerge from the water and rush toward the lighthouse. They hear Anaris calling and believe they finally have a chance to rescue her. Everything is going according to David's plan. The creatures reach the open entrance and storm inside. A violent battle immediately begins. David fights desperately while retreating toward the upper levels of the lighthouse. The creatures continue pouring in from every direction. Meanwhile, Gruner prepares to trigger the explosives. At the perfect moment, he pulls the lever. Nothing happens. The explosives fail to detonate. Gruner is shocked. In the chaos, he realizes the wiring is disconnected. David quickly rushes upstairs and discovers the problem. While the creatures climb higher and higher, he reconnects the wires as fast as possible. Below him, Gruner struggles to hold them back alone. Finally, the connection is restored. David activates the first explosive line. A massive explosion shakes the entire island. Fire and debris fill the air. Many creatures are killed instantly, but the attack does not stop. Dozens of survivors continue climbing toward the lighthouse. Seeing no other option, Gruner triggers the second explosive line. An even larger explosion follows. The blast throws both men across the lighthouse. Everything goes dark. The next morning, David slowly regains consciousness. The battle is over. Dead creatures cover the shoreline. Others lie injured among the rocks. Anaris is nowhere to be seen. Gruner immediately begins killing any wounded creatures that survived the explosions. As David watches the scene, something catches his attention. One of the dying creatures is wearing a necklace around its neck. The sight changes everything. For the first time, David truly sees them as living beings rather than monsters. They have families, they have relationships, they have lives. The creature looks at him with fear and pain in its eyes. David suddenly feels guilty. Maybe this was never a war between monsters and humans. Maybe it was only a terrible misunderstanding. From that day onward, the attacks completely stop. But every night, strange cries can be heard from the ocean. The sounds are filled with grief. The creatures are mourning their dead. And with every passing day, David becomes more convinced that they may have destroyed innocent lives. The following day, David walks along the shore and notices several young creatures watching him from a distance. They do not attack. They simply stare at him. The sight fills him with regret. Wanting to make peace, David builds a small circle of stones near the beach. In the center, he places the toy boat he once made for Anaris. Then he waits. Hours pass, but Anaris never appears. One morning, David David notices something strange. The toy boat is gone. Standing near the stone circle is a small creature child holding it in its hands. David understands the message. Someone found the gift. Someone accepted it. To show he means no harm, David throws his burning torch away from the circle and slowly steps back. A short time later, the ocean begins to move. Anaris emerges from the water. Behind her stands an entire group of creatures. This time nobody attacks, nobody runs. For the first time, humans and creatures stand together in peace, but that peace does not last. Suddenly, Gruner arrives carrying a weapon. He cannot accept what is happening. Without conflict, he no longer feels powerful. David tries to explain that the creatures only want safety for their families, but Gruner refuses to listen. He orders Anaris to return to him. For the first time, she ignores his command. The moment shatters something inside him. His control is gone. His kingdom is slipping away. Furious, he storms back toward the lighthouse. David hopes Gruner has finally understood the truth. He is wrong. Moments later, a bright flare shoots into the sky. The signal projectile crashes directly into one of the creature children. The child dies instantly. Panic spreads through the group. The creatures flee. Anaris looks at David with heartbreak and disappears into the sea. David is consumed by rage. He rushes toward the lighthouse and confronts Gruner. A violent fight breaks out. David demands to know why he destroyed their chance for peace. But Gruner has completely lost control. As the struggle continues, David discovers an old photograph among Gruner's belongings. The woman in the picture looks familiar. Then the truth finally hits him. The woman is the same person whose photograph appeared in Robert's diary. Gruner is not a different man at all. He is Robert. The missing weather officer never died. After losing his wife and spending years alone on the island, he abandoned his old identity and became Gruner. The isolation destroyed him. The island turned him into someone else. And now that truth is finally about to catch up with him. David calls out to him. He tells him to stop. He tells him that this is not who he really is. As Gruner raises a metal rod to attack him, David suddenly shouts his real name, Robert. The word hits him like a shockwave. Gruner freezes. For a moment, the anger disappears from his face. David reminds him of who he used to be, a man who loved his wife, a man who was not a murderer, a man who once cared about others. Slowly, Robert begins to break down. Years of loneliness, grief, isolation, and obsession had twisted his mind. He finally realizes what he has become. The creatures were never trying to conquer the island. They only wanted to rescue one of their own. Everything that happened was the result of fear and misunderstanding. Overwhelmed by guilt, Robert lowers his weapon. Then he does something unexpected. He walks toward the creatures and surrenders himself. David tries to stop him, but it is too late. The creatures surround Robert. Within moments, he is killed. His long and tragic story comes to an end. Afterward, David retreats into the lighthouse and locks the door behind him. Time passes. The seasons change. The island grows quiet once again. Almost 1 year later, a government ship finally arrives. A new weather officer steps onto the island along with several officials. They are surprised to find David still alive. Naturally, they ask what happened to the previous weather officer. David looks toward the ocean before answering. Then he gives them the same story he once heard himself. He says that the man went toward the sea and never returned. The officials accept the explanation. They assume David is simply the next caretaker of the island. David never corrects them. As the ship prepares to leave, he stands alone on the lighthouse balcony, watching the waves below. By now, he understands why Robert never wanted to leave. This island has changed him too. Meanwhile, Anaris is finally free. She lives peacefully with her family and her people. No one controls them anymore. No one hunts them anymore. For the first time, they can live without fear. David watches the ocean in silence. Somewhere beneath those waves, Anaris is still out there. The war is over. The island is finally at peace. And that is where the story comes to an end.